Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Road to Rotation. Up today we have the ST07 leader, Charlotte Linlin, who is a mono yellow leader with 5,000 life, 5,000 power, 5 life, and her ability is Dawn times 2 when attacking. You may add 1 card from the top or bottom of your life cards to your hand. Then if you have 2 or less life cards, add up to 1 card from your hand to the top of your life cards. So this is a leader that can set up triggers. That's the main kind of draw to this one. She also is Big Mom Pirates type, which is something that'll be relevant for what we get into after this. But general consensus on what this deck probably wants to do is you really want to play around the trigger mechanic, stacking in advantageous triggers into your life at a pretty reasonable cost because you're already wanting to swing 7s with your leader. And then taking advantage of the fact that your opponents kind of have to pick between swinging at your face and giving you triggers or holding back to try to deny you that value. Also from that same starter deck, we have kind of her signature card, which is this 5 cost event Soul Focus. It has main, your opponent chooses 1. They trash a card from the top of their life, or they grant you 1 life. And then it has a trigger of activate this card's main effect. As you can see, the trigger fits in really good with this leader ability. Just stack this into life. You get to either heal for essentially free, or you get to burn 1 of their life. Either option works for you. The only downside being that they get to pick which one is better for them at the moment. But it is a very strong play if you can set it up. And then also, just at the end of the game, this can represent quite a bit of pressure. As long as they're not already at 0, then just using one of these really incentivizes them to consider giving you a life, which may be enough for you to sit behind blockers and just survive yet another turn. Which can be pretty devastating for them. It also gives you another life for using with your leader ability, so that life that you get off of Soul Focus is likely to be rather effective as a deterrent because you've picked what card it is. Moving on to the first thing that you would usually consider with deck building is the character's type. So we have up here the Big Mom Pirates type characters. A couple that I wanted to highlight, we have Pudding, who's a 1-cost 2,000 power 1k counter searcher who looks at the top 4 for either a Sanji or Big Mom Pirates other than Pudding. So that's a nice little linking piece between all of your other things. We have Flambe, who lets you take 1 from the top or bottom of your life cards to draw 1 card, and just as a 2k. This can be really important when you need to get down to that threshold so that you can start stacking triggers in your life. Which can be quite important, so keep that in mind. Next we have a pretty good on-curve option with this Perospero. He's a 3-cost 5,000 power no counter. With on KO, look at the top 3 and reveal a Big Mom Pirates and add it to your hand. And then he also has trigger, you can trash a card to play him. So he can be a pretty effective card either to be put into life or to just exert pressure, and when your opponents do kill him, you get to search for one of your later guys. From the second starter deck for yellow, we have this Charlotte Katakuri, which is a 5-cost 6,000 power 1k counter blocker with activate main once per turn. You may turn 1 card from the top of your life cards face up and then give a Rested Dawn card to your leader or one of your characters. This can be pretty effective at getting your leader ability online because sometimes the 2 Dawn means you are playing off curve. So it can be pretty useful to kind of set that up. And because you're likely taking the life anyways, doing the reveal is not too big of a deal because you will just use your leader ability to set it back down in the worst case and usually with a better card. Next up, we have the 8-cost 8,000 power no counter Katakuri from OP03. He has on play, add up to one character with a cost of 8 or less to the top or bottom of its owner's library face up. So this one can be pretty effective with the leader because you can put one of your searchers or something like that, or a flampe that you played out early, back into your life. You have 2 Dawn left over, which is exactly what you need for your leader. And then you can take that 2k back to hand and replace it with a good trigger. So all around a pretty strong card as a heal option, but it also has the flexibility to sometimes just put one of their things that's particularly problematic into their life and save it for a different time. You'll deal with it later. So that's always an option as well. And finally, the main reason why Big Mom Pirate leaders are important is this 10-drop Linlin. It's not quite as powerful as it has been in the past, but it's still a very strong card. It's a 10 cost, 12,000 power, no counter with on play. If your leader has the Big Mom Pirates type, add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life cards, then trash up to 1 card from the top of your opponent's life cards. So this is both a life burn and a life heal in the same package, all while having a 12k body, which is great for swinging in later. A lot of the games that you'll win, you'll have the win based off of several of these and some convenient triggers to keep your opponent from kind of burning you out when you tap out all the way to play a 10-drop. So just a strong card and really good at exerting pressure because it's really hard for them to protect their life in an effective way, especially because if they choose to go to 0 before this comes down, then they still have to deal with a 12k body, which it can be difficult to deal with. Moving on to the next category here, I have triggers. So just filling up your deck with cards that you are interested in putting into your life with your leader ability. First up, we have Lilith, who is a searcher, looks at the top 4 for a trigger other than herself. And that's just a pretty good linking card for pulling together all of your triggers that you're running in the deck. And then it also has a trigger itself of activate this card's on play. So if in a pinch, you can use it as the card you put in your life to trigger out. Next up, we have this 2 cost, 3,000 power, 1k counter Onami, whose on play is up to one of your characters or leaders gains banish this turn. This can be an effective pressure tool to kind of force your opponent to use up more of their counter than they were probably expecting to. But it also has a trigger of KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. This is real strong, less so in the current meta, but it is a very strong ability that is pretty reliably a good trigger to put into life. Almost always it will have options for what to hit. Next one is a newer one. This is from PRBO2, the Otama, who's a 2 cost, 0 power, 2k counter with activate main. You may rest this character and add 1 card from the top or bottom of your life cards to your hand. Up to one of your leader or character cards gains 3,000 power during this turn. Because you're a 5 life leader, a lot of times you'll have an extra life to spare or something like that, which can be really useful to use that to get extra pressure. And because it doesn't trash itself, it just rests itself, your opponent are incentivized to swing into it, meaning that it can act as a pseudo blocker as well. It also has a trigger of rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less, which can be a kind of game winner if your opponent has sequenced their swings poorly, or if you're playing against a particularly aggressive deck with a lot of 4 or less targets. So something that's worth stacking into your deck every once in a while, or into your life every once in a while. Next up, we have Veggie, one of the better cards to stack into your life. He's a 3 cost, 3,000 power, 2k counter with trigger up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters cannot attack during this turn. This is exactly the kind of card you want against those aggressive decks and just really stifling out their aggression. The biggest downside is he doesn't really do anything else, so you really need to see him in trigger for it to benefit you. But he is a 2k counter, which is a reasonable floor for a card like this. Next up, we have the 3 cost, 1,000 power, 1k counter blocker Brule, who also has trigger. Play this card. Another version of Veggie in some sense that has a little bit more applicability as something you can play out at the expense of not quite being quite as powerful as a trigger as Veggie is. Next up, we have Sanji, who's a 4-cost 5,000 power 1k counter blocker. With trigger, you may trash one card from your hand to play this card. This one kind of splits the difference between an aggressive trigger body and this Brûlé, allowing you to kind of pick which option is necessary for you at the moment, being able to just get in extra swings, or if you need to in the late game sit behind a blocker, it is an effective blocker, just tossing away a brick to get that. Next up, we have Kikunojo, who's a 4-cost 6,000 power no counter. With on KO, if your opponent has 3 or less life cards, add up to one card from the top of your deck to the top of your life. So a nice little bit of heal there, making it pretty sticky. Your opponents aren't likely to want to remove it a lot of the times. And if they are removing it, then at least you get another chance at the casino and may hit another trigger that can really mess up their plans. It also has a trigger of if your opponent has 3 or less cards, play this card. Which means it can be an effective play in the end game. If you think that you can survive another turn, you can stack this into life with your leader ability and really set up for an aggressive turn on the crackback by triggering this out. Next up, another trigger body here. This one is on a 2K, and he is a 5-cost 5,000 power 2K Satori. With trigger, you may trash one card from your hand to play this card. So this one is similar to Sanji in that Sanji is a defensive card. Satori also is, being a 2K instead of a blocker. Depending on which one you need more, both are pretty good options. The 2K is pretty easy to include in the deck, so oftentimes you'll see Satori over Sanji, but they both have their arguments. Next up, we have the Nami, who's a 5-cost 5,000 power 1k counter. With on play, you may trash one card with a trigger from your hand, then KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. Then, if you have 3 or less cards in your hand, draw one. So this is a pretty meaningful removal card. When removal is at its strongest, it is a rather effective way of dealing with your opponent's kind of mid-range bodies. And in the late game, it does cycle itself, so if you get too many bricks in hand, this can be pretty effective at getting rid of those. It also has a trigger of activate this card's on-play effect, meaning that even in trigger, as long as you have some extra trigger cards in hand, you can get a removal effect, similar to how this Onami works, but on a different body, giving you a lot of access to this sort of effect. Finally, in the triggers category, we have the Boa Hancock, who's a 5-cost 7,000 power no counter. With on play, you may trash one card with a trigger from your hand. Your opponent's rested leader or up to one of your opponent's characters other than Monkey D. Luffy cannot attack until the end of your opponent's next end phase. And trigger, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So this one works in a kind of similar way to Nami, and that this is kind of pseudo removal. It comes with a bigger body but no counter, and a slightly worse version of a trigger, but it is still a very effective card, particularly in some matchups like against Zoro, where you can freeze out their leader, preventing them from getting a lot of swings from that leader ability, or otherwise freezing out problematic things for you to just ignore and just keep going past it. Makes for an interesting card overall. So that's it for the triggers. The next category I have is some of the other 2Ks that do not have triggers on them that could be interesting. First up, we have the 2-cost 0 power 2K counter Hiyori, who has on play, you may add one card from the top or bottom of your life cards to your hand, then add up to one card from your hand to the top of your life cards. So this just works as redundancy with your leader effect, giving you the ability to stack the triggers that you want into your life early in the game, which can be really important at getting some early tempo if you're running a bunch of trigger bodies, for example. So quite strong there. Next up, we have the 2-cost 2,000 power 2K counter Zeus, who has on play, you may add one card from the top or bottom of your life cards to your hand, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So another removal option here. I would probably consider this one if you don't already have your 2Ks selected and you are not running Nami. I do think that Nami is the more reliable removal option, because it also generates a reasonable body on board, whereas Zeus does not, and he doesn't have trigger himself. So there's a little bit of tension there with what the deck wants to do and Zeus, but he is a very solid option if you have need for more removal. Next up, we have the 3-cost, 3,000 power, 2k counter X-Drake, who has Activate Main. You may rest this character. If the number of your life cards is equal to or less than the number of your opponent's life cards, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So this one is particularly useful at getting around blockers in the late game. Say your opponent's ace is playing ace and they play out their Marcos. You can rest them. The big downside to it is you do have to take pretty liberally to get down to lower because you are a 5-life leader. So this isn't at its strongest in this deck, but it is a reasonable effect for getting around in-game blockers, which a lot of decks right now are wanting to get out. That is one of the downsides to playing yellow decks at the moment, is you have difficulties dealing with blockers. And so teching in what options you can is particularly useful. Next up, I have just a miscellaneous category with some cards that you can also consider. First up, we have the 2-cost, 0-power, 1k counter Shirahoshi with when this character is KO'd by your opponent's effects, add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life cards, and blocker. So there's just a solid chump blocker that prevents your opponent from just being able to out it with some basic removal and ignore the blocker part. So you almost always will get to use the block, which can be important, as some chump blockers just die and you don't get to take advantage of their blocker. Next up, we have Hawkins, who is a 4-cost, 5,000 power, 1k counter with on KO, trash up to 1 card from the top of your opponent's life cards. Effective life burn here. He also has a trigger of draw 2 cards and trash 1 from your hand. So pretty good mid-game body here, threatening to burn their life if they go at it, or otherwise if they're ignoring it, then you just get to blink for 5 every turn. In the same category of Hawkins, we have the Nico Robin, who's a 6-cost, 6,000 power, 1k counter with on play. If your opponent has 3 or more life cards, trash up to 1 from the top of your opponent's life cards. And trigger, play up to 1 yellow character with a cost of 3 or less from your hand. So another trigger that would be searchable by some of your other pieces, and another life burn card. So a little bit of life burn, a little bit of life burn. Soul Focus is a little bit of life burn a lot of the times, heal the rest of the time. So lots of kind of overloading on this ability can be useful. Next and finally, in the life burn category, we have the 8-cost, 9,000 power, no counter Eustace Captain Kidd, who has on play, you may rest this character, trash up to 1 card from the top of your opponent's life cards, and end of turn, if your opponent has 2 or less life cards, draw 1 card and trash 1 from your hand. So effective top end here with some card fixing and just some reliable life burn. If you can stack it all up, you can make for a pretty effective package there. Other categories we have here, we have Gadatsu, who is a 5-cost, 6,000 power, 1k counter with on play, KO up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost equal to or less than the number of your opponent's life cards. Early game, you can really get ahead by removing their early plays and establishing a 6k body, but it really only works in the early game, so keep that in mind. But it is pretty effective for what it does when you find the right matchup. Next up, we have the Monkey D. Luffy, who's a 5-cost, 6,000 power, 1k counter with Activate Main. You may trash this character. If you have 2 or less life cards, KO up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less, then draw 1 card. So this one kind of works in the opposite times that Gadatsu does. Gadatsu is really good early. Luffy is better a little bit later in the game, partly because you have to be down to 2 life. And partly because you want to really get used to the swings before you activate him, which would require a couple extra turns to make happen. He also does have a trigger, though, of KO up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less, which is a really nice trigger to have when the meta is a more removal-friendly meta. Moving on to some events you can consider. First up is the 0-cost event of counter. You may trash 1 from your hand up to 1 of your leader or characters, gains 3,000 power during this battle. This is just a great way of getting rid of bricks. Sometimes you'll draw too many of the 10-drop Linlins and you need to get rid of them. And then otherwise, the great thing about this one is it has a super good trigger if you have 0 life cards, you may add 1 card from the top of your life to the top of your life cards and then trash 1 from your hand. So it just acts as a redo on the life at the cost of 1 card. And that's just really strong. It is a little bit hard to get set up because your leader ability would only really work at that point at 1 life, which can be tough to set up, where you're stable at 1 life and you can set up this to survive yet another turn. Next up, we have the 1-cost event Blaze Slice. It has main and counter up to 1 of your leader or character cards, gains 1,000 power during this turn. Then if your opponent has 2 or less life cards, rest up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. This is another way you can get around blockers. And on defense, you can surprise somebody, kind of take away one of their attackers sometimes. All around, a pretty effective card for the 1 cost. It also has a trigger of rest up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less, which is a great place to be. It kind of does its job whether or not it's in your hand or it's in your life at that point, as long as it comes late enough into the game. So, great card. Another option for resting blockers is the 2-cost 200 million volts Amaru, which has main up to 1 of your leader or characters, gains 3,000 power during this turn. Then, if you have 1 or less life cards, rest up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So generally just a plus 3k and rest a thing. It also does have a pretty effective trigger of you may trash 2 cards from your hand, add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life cards. So it can be another one of those rebuys on life, which can be a really effective way of winning the game if you can set it up. The biggest downside to this one is it only rests something if you have 1 or less life cards. So it has to be either the second to last or the last life for it to be effective there, which can be a bit of a problem. One thing you can choose to do with your leader ability is go down to use your leader ability to go down to 1 life and not refill it. Not usually something I would recommend, but it is a possibility to turn on Amaro using your leader ability, and which point you would have an extra card in hand that you might be able to use on defense, and you would be able to get around one of their blockers in that situation. So those are some of the extra cards. Finally, I want to go over one more category, which is a really spicy one. I would not necessarily recommend this one unless you're just trying to have fun, but I figured I would pull it up anyways. So there are quite a few Charlotte Linlin top-end cards that you could play, like this one, which is a 6-cost 7,000 power, no counter. On play, you may trash 1 card from your hand. Your opponent chooses 1. Your opponent trashes 2 cards from their hand, or they trash 1 card from the top of their life. So this is a pretty effective card at kind of fighting into lower resource games, and it comes with a pretty good and efficient body. Also, there's another 7-cost Linlin, who is a 7-cost 8,000 power. With on play, your opponent chooses 1. Trash 1 card from the top of your opponent's life cards. Add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to your life cards. So it's another version of Soul Focus, just with an 8k body on it. So the theme you're going for is a lot of ways of forcing your opponent to pick an option, and if you ask the question enough times, they will eventually have to pick options that don't work out for them. But once you have all of the Linlins in your deck, you get to access to a new package of these homies. And so the pattern with all of these homies is they all have trigger play this card, and what they do is activate main. You pay some cost, usually just resting the character, but sometimes also trashing a different homie, to get some effect that is specifically targets your Charlotte Linlin, which can be your leader or your characters. So the options are plus 1,000 off of Napoleon, Zeus, who has give a Charlotte Linlin banish, Prometheus, who has give a Charlotte Linlin double attack, and then Hera, which is trash 1 homie other than this and rest this character to set a Linlin as active. So if you manage to get all of them on the field, you will have a double attacking banish character with plus 1000 power, and it will get to swing twice. So in theory, if you were to get these out of trigger and not have to play or have them all on the field, you could be swinging twice with a I won't even go so far as to include the 10-drop Big Mom. I'll just include your leader. You would be able to have a 16k that with banish and double strike and swing twice, which would be a really good way of dealing with a whole bunch of life in an effective way. Again, I would not recommend this as a effective way of winning games, but it would be a lot of fun to see it go off. So something to consider if you are just looking for a little bit of fun. So that will wrap up the card discussions, and I will see you in just a second with a sample deck list. All right, so here we are with a sample deck list. I chose not to go too adventurous with it, opting for a mainly Big Mom Pirates package with the Flampe, the Pudding, Katakuri, Parasparrow, and the Big Mom, as well as Soul Pocus and Brulee. So those are my Big Mom Pirates. We went for some extra triggers here with Onami for a good trigger out of life and good thing to stack. Beji, who's good to stack as well, and the 0-drop event as another card to stack. And then to round out the deck, we have the Kuma, who I forgot to mention in the individual cards section. He's a 6-cost, 7,000 power, 1-kit counter with on play. You may trash one card from your hand, add the top card of your deck to your life cards. Then this character gains +2 cost until the end of your opponent's next turn. Then it has opponent's turn on KO, add the top card of your life to your deck to your life cards. So this is a very efficient heal card, coming with a reasonably sticky body and a pretty good attacking body that your opponents really won't want to remove because it'll heal you again. And then the last 2 slots I put in the Kid to do some life burn. So I had moderate success with this list. I think that they're the kind of casino triggers ability here is pretty effective, even into the meta now. It is not going to be winning any big tournaments or anything like that, but I think you can still have some fun playing into the meta, but not so much to where they're necessarily great content. But this is the deck. You really want to utilize Soul Pocus and the triggers that you can kind of stack in life to put on some effective pressure. And if your opponent does survive into the late game, you can just start playing the Linlins and set up for a very late game push with a lot of 12k bodies. So yeah, that is the deck for this week. Next week, we will be starting OP03 officially with the Red Ace leader. So the cousin of the big meta threat that we have in the meta right now, the mono Red Ace. Hope you guys are looking forward to that, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.